This is where we weren't supposed to exist. A space for conversations that don't always come out clean the first time. You don't have to have it all figured out before you speak. You don't have to translate yourself to be understood. This is where meaning takes its time. Come as you are. We'll figure it out together.
Hi, I'm Sher Griffin, your resident cognitive ecologist on Substack. I spend a lot of time inside questions of meaning, how it forms, how it moves, and what happens when it gets misread. Okay, I think I'm just going to start this. I don't really know how to do a podcast yet, but I know why I'm doing it. So I think the way that makes the most sense for me is to kind of interview myself, because that's honestly how my brain works anyways. So this might feel a little bit different, but I think that's kind of the point. So, Cher, why are you starting this podcast? Okay, so a while back, I found out I was autistic. A little bit before that, I found out I was ADHD. Before that, I was diagnosed with a bunch of things that weren't actually accurate for me. And while I was kind of understanding myself, um, I passed through the realm of giftedness. I was identified as a child as gifted. And so I was starting to just understand all these intricacies of my mind. And I came across the work of Jamie Horowitz. And this is before I even had an autism diagnosis. I was kind of like, I don't know, playing around in there, but not really thinking like, no, I'm gifted, I'm not autistic. And I had no idea that the overlaps and all of these different things when it came to neurodivergence at the time, right? Now I almost, have a PhD in this stuff, but here nor there. Gestalt, I was learning about Gestalt language processing from Jamie Horowitz's work, and I bought their book, and the book is called No Place for Autism, and I highly recommend anybody read it. But I read that book and I was like, oh, I'm autistic. And yeah, so that's kind of where it began. And after I got the autism diagnosis, I had a friend. I was having a lot of struggle in my work environment. A lot. I had taken on a role at a government organization. I came from the hospitality industry, so it's a totally different kind of environment, right? The way that things are organized, there's really restaurant work doesn't have the same kind of hierarchical dynamics. We'll put it that way. And so going into this this government role, I just don't see hierarchy. It's just not built into my system. It's not like I disrespect a hierarchy, especially in crisis situations and whatnot, but I don't understand. Anyways, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but hierarchies are kind of weird to me. I just don't get them. I don't understand why somebody is considered more relevant or more important or more authoritative just because of uh, an access that they were able to attain, right? And so, anyways, that work environment became really, really um, uh, detrimental to my well-being. I was having panic attacks, and it was not a fun situation. And so a friend of mine finally, she's just like, Cher, go get an autism diagnosis. You're autistic. You need accommodations. And so I did. And I was already attempting to get accommodations before the diagnosis, but going through that process and trying to get accommodations at the same time and having many, many people in your work environment system not believe you, subtly or not so subtly, sent me into a massive burnout. And so I didn't really kind of come back to Gestalt language processing until probably another year and a half or so after my diagnosis. I was recovering from burnout, and I was learning all of this stuff about autism. My gifted brain went on overdrive. Okay. Like this is what I was doing. I was learning about autism. I was learning about ADHD. I was learning about um, Gestalt language processing. And the more and more I learned about Gestalt language processing, the more and more my experience in the world started to make more sense. I was really able to understand the complexities of my mind in ways that were kind of extraordinary for me. And so, um, yeah, so I started writing about it. Anyways, we're just going to fast forward. There's so much to this story. I could go in a million different directions. I'm just going to be a GLP with you right now. So, but so I started writing about it. I was like, you know what? This is the way that I'm going to really understand my experience. And so I wrote through like an autoethnographic lens, like really trying to understand my experiences throughout my life. So I did a bunch of time jumps, right? That's what I call it. I call them time jumps. Um, or temporal recursion, if we want to get into the cognitive ecology model, but where I was kind of making meaning of past experiences through the correct lens, right? Like really understanding, like, oh, that's why that occurred. That's why those people didn't believe me. And these were a lot of childhood experiences, right? Which can cause complex PTSD when you're being misunderstood like this as a child, where you're being shamed, where you're being ridiculed, where you're being um, basically told that you're wrong about your own internal reality. And so, yeah, I needed to really understand my experience. And so part of this 37 part series was that. And part of it was like, dude, I need to understand this with other GLPs. Like I need to like hear other people's experiences too. So I don't feel like I already felt crazy my whole life. Like I don't need to feel that anymore, right? Like I need to know that other people are experiencing things the way that I'm experiencing them, or at least intersecting with them in some way. And so that's why I wrote the way that I wrote, and 37 parts, and I landed here on a podcast, and I wasn't expecting to. I did not think that I would ever be willing to host a podcast, let alone be perceived in this way. And so this is kind of like meant to be, I guess. Wow, Cher, it sounds like you went through like quite the journey over the last 4 or 5 years. That's a lot. That's intense. um, so, what kind of space are you actually trying to create here? I want this to be a space where people don't have to pre-translate themselves. That is the main thing, where we can just experience our words as they come, right? Where we can tell our stories in the way that they make sense for us and be held in that space without rejection, without exclusion, without any of that, right? I want a space where GLPs can be GLPs. I want a space where, and you don't even have to be a GLP. That's the thing. Like if you don't identify with GLP, that's totally cool. But if you feel like you think non-linearly, if you feel like you make associations and you create these kind of interwoven relationships in the way that you think, then you're invited here. If you identify as ADHD, you're invited here. If you are late discovered, gifted, autistic, ADHD, any of those things, like you're invited here. Like, I feel like we have been, through that 37 part series that I wrote, I recognized the epistemic injustice that Gestalt language processors have faced. It's huge. It really is. And I don't think people recognize like the gravity of it. And I want to create a space where that gravity gets to be like held and understood in its own right? Like in its own words, in its own right. And I want to hear from you. I want like I that is a big part of who I am. I'm a very highly relational human. I completely agree, Cher. I think you are a highly relational human. I actually think it's one of your defining characteristics. And so, with that being said, why does this matter to you personally? Gosh, um, that's such a good question, and there's so many threads I could pull here. There's so many reasons why it matters to me personally, but they don't just land in my personal realm. Um, a lot of it is my justice sensitivity, right? Like it's me seeing, like I feel like I can kind of point out Gestalt language. Like I can see it in the way people write online. I can feel it in the way people speak when they make TikTok videos. All of these different things, and I've seen the exclusion. I've witnessed it. The ostracization. I'm really bad with those words, but it hurts my heart, and I've been part of that, right? I've been misread and misinterpreted in so many ways, and I want to make space for the real interpretation of who we are. And I also know what it feels like to be met. And I want to provide that type of space for others. So why this name? We weren't supposed to exist? Yeah, the main point here is because we've been moving through systems that were never designed to understand us. And I think that's really huge piece right there, right? Like all of our systems, all of our social systems, our education systems, and not just like inconveniently, like structurally designed to exclude our minds. And that's an injustice, right? Like that is an injustice. And so we weren't supposed to exist, kind of points to that injustice. And this podcast is being a little subversive, right? Why not? And who is this podcast for, Cher? It's for people who've always felt like they've had to translate themselves. But it's for anybody else to listen, to understand. I remember, like, okay, so years ago, I found this concept that was happening in Denmark. And it was called I think it was called the Empathy Library. I think is what it was called. Don't quote me on that, but you can Google it. But basically what it was is you could like check out a human. Really, like instead of check out a book, you check out a human. And so you would sit with that human, you'd check out a chunk of time of their time, and you would learn about them. You would learn about their lives, where they came from, their struggles in life, their wins in life. I mean, whatever, right? Like you were able to ask them questions and they just shared about them. And that just felt so beautiful to me. Like I couldn't get that out of my head. I haven't been able to get that out of my head since I learned about it. There was just something so cool about that, because I think right now, even in society, like we struggle to understand difference. And I feel like there's this push for sameness, And so, yeah, I mean, it's for anybody really, but it's mostly for those of us who've had to translate ourselves just to be legible. And what are you actually inviting people into, Cher? I think I'm inviting people into something real and human and relational. And I don't know what it's going to be. I'm inviting people into building it with me. It's emergent. It will become what it's supposed to become based on the people who come. And more than anything, I'm just really excited. I was not expecting like the reception that I got. Like when I wrote this, like it was that thing that happens for Gestalt language processors, for systems thinkers, for those of us who like know before we know, it was like I wrote only that line for my last part of my 37 parts, that it was an invitation to co-creation. But I didn't know what kind of invitation yet. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that something was going to emerge. I had faith and trust in that. And this is what it is, right? Like, and why not? Why not? And I'm just like, it's this calm excitement, right? Like, I haven't felt like this sure of something in a very long time. I'm very sure of this. We weren't supposed to exist, but we are.